talked about ethics yesterday because it's critical to not just investigative journalism, but the broad spread of journalism. Without ethics, without integrity, without credibility, you even lose the essence of the profession. So that's where we placed a lot of attention on that. Because once you get those ethical components right, there's every likelihood that you make the right choices, you take the appropriate decisions. And like we said yesterday, you were always caught between doing the right thing and doing it right. A lot of people have mastered the art of doing it right. But what is more difficult is doing the right thing. It's a lot more difficult to do the right thing than doing it right. I imagine you, madam, you are a venture capitalist. You know venture capitalism? Those morbid individuals who just make money, who the end justifies the means. They do as much as. So, you see, the thing is that I'm sorry to say this, I have a very serious issue. I'm talking this way because I am a little bit outraged by the way Nigerian journalists behave. There's so much intellectual bankruptcy. We do not pay attention to the critical details that we need to take out to the public, all because of some of these issues I'm going to list out. It's I started this way so that we understand the depth and the enormity of the challenges that investigative journalists and indeed the broad spread of journalists in this country must confront and deal with frontally. If you do not do that, you continue to become lackeys and you become people, you just be like banana peels. And that is the best description for the Nigerian journalists. It's just like banana peels. They take the juice out of you and dump you as discarded as useless. And that has happened over and over and over again. You need to deal with these issues moving forward. For instance, holding trust and the sanctity of source confidentiality. We talked about that. How do you hold a lot of people, Yusuf Ali yesterday talked about some people have gone to jail refusing to name their sources. That's actually the way to go. Unless a journalist is built up that way, you're wired that way, it's a threat to the very foundation of journalism. Because no source, as is always said, no source, no journalism. Then you have this temptation to deploy tactics generated from investigative journalism for blackmail. This has happened over and over again. Because in the course of your digging and finding out information, you come across very compromising, sometimes highly sensitive information. There is a temptation for you to sell that information. And you sell that, you sell along with it the integrity of the job, you sell the whole basket of journalism. By the time you begin to sell those confidential information that you got in supposedly a search for truth and justice. And once you get it, and because of the pressure of those who do not want it out, we'll come to that fundamental definition of investigative journalism. It's something that somebody wants to conceal. And because they want to conceal it, it is priceless to them. And they offer you, so you need to be able to beat the temptation to agree to sell. Because once you sell your soul. There are perspectives to it. There are a lot of people who think, there are journalists who, for instance, utilitarian journalists, for instance, who tell you that the end justifies the means. This is very Machiavellian. If in the course of if you lie to save yourself or save the other person, if you lie in order to protect your source, some journalists say it is okay. We'll come to the variance in terms of that thought. But also let's understand the critical nature of his question. You are confronted with having to disclose your source. Do you lie what are the methods you're going to take? I'll give you a story. In the heat of IEDs, you know IEDs? The IEDs in this country, it has really gone down now. Improvised explosive devices. I went out to investigate IEDs. And my takeoff point, you'll be surprised, my takeoff point was JAM results. How do you link it? You see, you need to think deep. You need to think deep and somehow find a way to act wise. From JAM results, I now also went to the GCE results. But basically, my takeoff point was the JAM results. The thing was this. That year, Yobe State scored 2.1% overall. JAM results. Lagos State had 74 or thereabout. Oyo State had 87. Edo had 53, just like that. A lot of the states below the Niger had upwards of 50. A lot of the states above the Niger had downwards of 50. States like Yobe had 2.1. Borno then, I think, had about 16 or 17, or thereabout, in between. So my curiosity was this. These guys were saying Boko Haram, right? And they were flying around with IEDs. IED is natural science. You need chemistry, you need physics, you need electronics, you need mathematics to be able to do IEDs. So how do you have a situation where people that, for political correctness, they say we are educationally disadvantaged, and their government throw that as a bargaining chip within the Nigerian Federation? Governors of the 19 states of the northern states of Nigeria go always to the bargaining table to say we are educationally disadvantaged, and because of that, we should be giving certain concessions in admissions and stuff like that. Right or wrong? You go to universities, there are catchment areas, and part of the criteria for those catchment areas include educationally disadvantaged states of the country. Why on earth with an entity want to be seen as educationally disadvantaged? Because it politically massages them, and they can also access additional funding because of that. And the more they keep the people educationally disadvantaged, at least create the notion, promote the narrative of educationally disadvantaged, the people around them cannot even question them. So here are people that are educationally disadvantaged. Here are people that are scoring 2.1 in JAM overall, but are able to do a high grade scientific product. So we started digging it. I know what I found. I went to certain locations in Kaduna, and I found, it was very gory. I found human thumbs. I went to St. Gerald's. I met this Igbo lady that was a victim of the explosion, and part of her face was blown off. I saw intestine. I went to explosive points. I'll answer your question directly, because I kept following it up. And the police headquarters called me. The thing that saved me was my engagement with the Deputy Commissioner of Operations. And their question was, how do you always know the point of explosion? Critical question. If you are not involved with them, how is it? Because I was always one of the first to call the police to get confirmation from them. And I called consistently. Once anything happens, incidentally, I'm limping partly because of attacks. I have a cut on my head, I have a broken shoulder, but no problem. I'm still in one piece. And I found they had cheap timers. You know timers? Plastic timers like this rubber clock, wristwatches, cheap timers. And some contraptions, wired contraptions around them. They had this groundnut oil can, vegetable oil can. Those were the things they were using to make bombs. I saw discarded TV sets, old TV sets, the box. They were using them to carry those things around. But at the end of the day, it's a story I don't want to talk about because my cameraman is dead today. Ibrahim, I was called back from Abuja to go and around Rabba Road in Kaduna, NAF, I don't know if you know Kaduna, okay, that NAF club, he lived around the place, and he died in the pool of his own blood. His stomach was torn open. He's dead now. God rest his soul. Yes, he was attacked. He was attacked. We still don't know what. His family said we should just, so we let it be. But he's dead. And when the police started asking me, where are you getting your source from? And I said, no, I cannot tell you. And they pressured me. And I said, no, I will not tell you. And they brought paper for me to, no. They didn't. They didn't do that. And I invoked, because you see, our problem is that we don't even know the law. In Nigeria, there's something called qualified privilege. You have a qualified privilege to keep quiet. And you have a qualified privilege not to talk. The media has that qualified privilege not to talk. You can invoke that and throw that. But if you don't know the law, you cannot say it. You can invoke that. But it's also possible that you invoke it and they still don't, like there's impunity in Nigeria. They can decide, the hell with you. You want to teach us the law? It's not a constitutional thing. But yes, but you see, it was derived from section, I think, 41 or 22 of the Constitution that gave the media the constitutional duty to hold government and people in public offices accountable. I think section 22, section 49, and 151. I'm not so sure. I'll get it and let you know. But there's those sections say that the media have a constitutional duty to hold governance accountable. Now, in the process of holding governance accountable, you might come to certain privileged information that aids your ability and capacity to exercise that obligation. Now, in disclosing that privileged information, you are inadvertently relinquishing your capacity to deliver on that obligation. So, there was a judicial pronouncement that journalists have qualified privilege to hold back on their information. And it is also contained, ratified by the Code of Ethics for Nigeria. You have access to the Code of Ethics for Nigeria, so that it's put together by the NPC, Nigerian Press Council, and that Nigerian Press Council is a government. It's a government agency. It's under the Ministry of Information. I know there have been problems between the NUJ and the Newspaper Proprietors Association, and extended to a broadcasting organization of Nigeria as to the workings of the NBC. A lot of active journalists think that it's a gag, but it exists. And that code of conduct was actually, that means that, and that code of conduct contains this element of privilege, qualified privilege, and confidentiality. So you can invoke that, but must invoke it in a way that cannot show that you have knowledge of it. Or else the police who want, or the SSS don't even play with it. The DSS will never play with that. That's why even when you go to the DSS on things like that, and once you play it up, the DSS is quiet about it. because they are very conversant with it. So first, to deal with it, you need knowledge of the law. It's critical to deal with protection of your source. You need knowledge of the law. If you do not have the knowledge of the law, it's difficult for you to even invoke that privilege. And like I'm sorry to say, after I've said that, a lot of Nigerian journalists are intellectually bankrupt. Sorry.
Education is the bedrock for the development of every society. What premium does the Nigerian government place on education? How much is budgeted for? How well are these funds utilized? What quality of teachers, students, and graduates are learning institutions churning out? For answers, join us on Leaves and Worms, an expository and incisive program showing every week on AD4 TV Radio, sponsored by Wale Soyinka Center for Journalism and supported by MacArthur Foundation. Don't miss it.
You see, that's where you understand the import of what I was talking about yesterday. The investigative journalist must exercise emotional intelligence. You must. Or else you put yourself in murky waters. Because you do investigation. And yesterday I told you that your investigation is not legal. It's not like the investigation of a judge. It's not like the investigation of a policeman. Your investigation is to unearth the truth. The investigation of the policeman is to turn you into a criminal. There's a different orientation. So that those policemen that you have, they feel an affront, a threat to their territory. And it's in their psychology. You must understand that. Those policemen that are talking to you come with what is called cognitive bias. They have something already ingrained in their brain. That's what they believe. So you talking to them, just mention of the word investigation is a trigger, is a provocation. So as a journalist must be conversant with this kind of environment. You will confront it on everyday basis. So what do you do then? My dear friend, emotional intelligence. You need emotional intelligence. You need, like I tell when I was very frequent in the university teaching, and I tell people, my best subject is man watch. Watch people. If you do not, and psychoprofile. An investigator journalist must be a psychoprofiler. You learn to psychoprofile situations, learn to psychoprofile people around you. If I psychoprofile you, I can almost to a certain degree of certainty, some degree of certainty, get close to what, it's like mind reading. The investigative journalist must also move towards the mind game. These are difficult things. And it comes with persistence, it comes with consistency, it comes with never giving up. Have you studied the mafia? Have you studied the operations of the mafia? They say, for instance, even among thieves, there's honor. Right? There's honor. There are mafiosos who will not, at gunpoint, will never disclose their benefactors. They will never. I spent a little time, there's something they call the Colombian tie. I spent a little time in New York, and the way I was at Long Island, Greenville, a tuxedo manufacturer, Taylor, was kidnapped and was kept underground for 12 days. And they buried him underground and were feeding him with something like this. There's an air hole. But it turned out it was one of his employees that did that, and they wanted a ransom of $2 million. But that's not the issue. The gang that guy belonged to were people who were doing Colombian necktie. No, Colombian necktie. You see, everything is coded, lady. Colombian necktie is not like this tie that I'm wearing. Colombian necktie is that you're dead. Colombian necktie is slitting your throat and pulling out your tongue and turning it into a tie. So a lot of things happen that you need to get to. Look at the young man that started familiar with Okada ride in Lagos. He started this Go-Kada, right? You know the guy is dead. He left Nigeria. He developed a software, and they tracked him, and they found him dead in his room in New York. The guy left Nigeria. His parents were Bangladeshi. They were poor. He developed that software, and there was this other software that they were working on to snitch on workers. They give it to managers, owners of businesses. With it, they can snitch on all their employees. Whatever you're saying, they know who's talking bad about them, who's talking bad about the business, and all. So they developed that, and it became a problem for him. He ran to Nigeria, made it with his Go-Kada. But they tracked him to this place. And he moved back, and his sister found him hanging from the roof. Yes. He's dead. The young man is dead. So it shows that if you want to do anything in investigation, you need to be conversant with all these possibilities that can come in the process of doing it. I have a crack on my head. If you check, I was in coma for 2 days. I lost so much blood. And some NSA people, there's one lieutenant colonel that met me in the hospital. Part of the reason I don't use complimentary card, because they couldn't trace who did it. They just came and spread bullets and said, kill him. And there was a time I was dragged from my car, and it's just TV that saved me, and they almost smashed my skull. And I came out of Kaduna with a swollen head, but I'm still together. One of the guys that warned me against what I was doing is dead today. You remember Albani? An ABU lecturer who was preaching against Albani. And he said to me I should stop it. I went to Zamfara to dig the rot that is going on with gold mining. I went to villages there, Yargalma, Bunkuyum, Anka, about 4 or 5 villages. And as at the time we were there, what also triggered that was a story that children were dying. And I got to the place, I was shown grave sites that had been used for 22 years. But within the span of 3 weeks, that grave site was filled up, and they had to go to another one. A lot of Nigerians don't know this. Nigerian journalists don't give a damn about these details. I got to the place, everything, as I'm speaking with you, Yargalma, Anka, Bunkuyu, they're scooping sand. It's being excavated 3 feet down. 3 meters down to pack the sand and take to another location, because the soil is contaminated, the air is contaminated, and water is contaminated as a function of gold mining in Zamfara. And I was shown small pellets of gold like this, sold for, when they bring it out from wherever the source, they sell it for 600, at the time I was there, it was 600 naira. 600 naira each like this. But the Alaji who comes and tells them, I'm Alaji, I'm your man, and all whatnot, takes it, brings it to Abuja, Kaduna, Kano, and sells it to South Koreans and sells it to Japanese at 3,800 minimum. But those guys are dying. The water is contaminated, the soil is contaminated. And one of the doctors from Shika, who is working on it, Dr. Abdullahi, told me that a lot of those guys, those children under 5 that were dying, may not be able to bear children later. I don't know about that. They're still working on them. So there are consequences for some things that happen. I was in Germany and I met people that I didn't believe existed. I saw people with hands like tadpole. They were victims of the war. Their parents were pregnant with them when the war was going on. And with all the chemicals that their parents ingested, some of them came up with one eye, the other ones came. I saw one, it's just like this, and his two hands. You know tadpoles? They were just like tadpoles. And I recorded it. The German embassy here was asking me, why did I do that? But I did it. They were all deformed in one way or the other. And they were making demands. They were making demands on the EU, the United Nations, so that they'll be given a compensation each of 80,000 euros at that time. So there are critical things that we need to be able to deal with. All the areas we've talked about in Nigerian journalism, the ethics, please, you get all of that. But you need to be able to, you have all of this. We've talked about it. Then there's the issue that you also mentioned, Ali talked about yesterday. There's this Pulitzer fever syndrome. You get overzealous. You want to be, there's the drive of being for fame and fortune, and you get overboard. You begin to do things in such an overzealous manner because you want the kind of recognition. He talked about the Pulitzer. What he mentioned yesterday was a Pulitzer fever. If you go to US, you hear a lot of things about Pulitzer fever. There's Woodward and Bernstein, who investigated Nixon over time and eventually led to the resignation of Nixon. And they had everything documented. So there's even a Pulitzer Prize up till today for investigative journalism, just like you have the Wole Soyinka Prize for investigative journalism. So some people get overboard wanting those recognition, wanting award, and they do all kinds of, huh? Oh, well, call it, they're fired up. I'd rather use that word. Then you have people who do phone hacking. It happens a lot. You look at what happened with Obi during the campaigns. His phone discussions were hacked. Right? Who hacked it? Eventually, it turned out the person who released was also an online journalist, quote unquote, journalist. But it was hacked. But that could have been a deliberate thing. That could have been released by the state actors. It could have been released by the DSS. It could have been released by the Defense, what do they call them? National Defense Intelligence, NDI. It could have been released by, even the FSS can do it. FSI can do it. The Foreign Service Intelligence. A lot of people could have done it. But is phone hacking a good thing? Can you just record people because you have access? More so that a lot of things can be done remotely now. Do you hack people's phone? Like it said, to do that, I can come into this place and put concealed recorders on me. I told you about pins for, who is a Catholic here? Catholic. Your rosaries. Rosaries today, you'll be given a gift of rosary. But those rosaries are recorders and transmitters. Just like I can give you a tasbah, and there are recorders and transmitters. You can get a Bible that has embedded transmitters in it. A lot of things are happening. So are they the correct things to happen? At every point is invasion of privacy. At every point is invasion of privacy. Now, in terms of giving, it's just finesse, trying to couch a wrong thing to make it look right. Today they say there are black hackers and there are white hackers. There are green hackers, there are red hackers. Everybody tries to find a safety net for what he does, to justify what you're doing. But there's nothing that justifies invading another person's privacy. A lot of journalists have agreed that it is a dark art of journalism. So if we say it's a dark art of journalism, Sorry, I also have issues with the use of the word dark, because dialectics of life. A lot of people night and day. So why is it that anything that a black man does is the one that is black? You know? So there's also a transmission of culture and ideology in that. But this concealed recording is considered to be the dark art of journalism. So do I answer you? Is it right? It's never right to invade a person's privacy. There are times, of course, that in the pursuit of truth and justice, any method deployed becomes justifiable. The end justifies the means.
AD4 TV Radio, we focus on education with emphasis on research and innovation, science and technology, women and girl child education, children, health, youth and sports, socio-political and economic reforms, security, environment, entrepreneurship, and entertainment. We'll give you information at your fingertips. Learn on the go. Follow AD4 TV Radio on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, and YouTube. AD4 TV Radio, reliable and credible.
We love you, AD4 TV Radio.